Well, good morning, and apologies for the slightly late start to the webinar this morning. And we still have one of our panelists who's having some technical difficulties, and we hope will be able to join the call very soon. And we're here today. It's a slightly different format than normal. We normally would hear a presentation and then have Q&A. We're going to have more of a conversational style today with Afua Kyei, who is going to be joining us, we hope, very soon, and Tangy Morgan, who you can see on screen, both from the Bank of England, on why diversity and representation are essential for firms. And I'll introduce our panelist in a moment. You'll know me, I'm Mike Wardle, I'm the CEO at DE&I, and my job here is really to welcome you to the webinar and to move swiftly through to the main content. And really to, first of all, thank our sponsors who allow us to range far and wide in these webinar series across the fields of economics and finance and technology and other interesting things that we enjoy sharing with you. The program today, as I say, is a bit more of a conversation than a presentation. We will have short presentations from Afua and from Tangy about their backgrounds and how they got to where they are. And then we'll have more of a conversation with some themes as we run through. There will be some time for Q&A at the end. And if you haven't used the GoToWebinar platform before, you'll find on your screen a questions tab where you can type in questions for our panelists, and we'll deal with those at the end of the session and share those with you. Also to say, today is being recorded, so if you want to go back and look again, or you want to share the content of the webinar with your friends and colleagues, it'll be published on our website on the events page probably in around 2 days' time, and that'll be there for you to share with others. We will have with us today, I'm sure, Afua Kyei, Chief Financial Officer of the Bank of England, who will be joining us as soon as she can. But we do have with us Tangy Morgan, Independent Senior Advisor to the Bank of England, and I'm delighted that we're able to invite such distinguished people to join us for this call. Afua and Tangy were both recognised on the 2023 Power List, being amongst the top 100 most influential Britons of Black heritage. Afua was the first Black executive to be appointed in the 329-year history of the Bank of England when she joined the bank at the age of 36, and Tangy was the first Black female senior advisor at the Bank of England. So groundbreaking, and we really are looking forward to hearing some of their experiences and thoughts about diversity, equality, and inclusion. So Tangy, over to you, I think, just for a brief kind of introduction to how you reached your position as a senior advisor to the bank.
Well, thank you, Mike, and the FS Club, and especially Michael Manelli, for the invitation to speak today. And I'll try to go through a 40-year career and not not put everybody to sleep here. I am a regular attendee of the FS Club webinars, and very honored to be here today and be among the list of the distinguished previous speakers. So I was invited to join the cohort of PRA senior advisors in 2016. Andrew Bailey was the deputy governor at the time. The role of a senior advisor is to bring industry knowledge and insights to the organization, operating as a non-executive director within the organization, of course. The role varies from day to day with input on major policy decisions, solvency and capital models, governance, staff training, mentoring, and stepping into executive roles when required. I also act as a sounding board for various directorates within the bank, such as the FinTech and Climate Hubs, and speak externally and have spoken externally at the FinTech InsurTech Summit and the Sustainability Summit at the British Embassy in Prague. I also chaired the launch of the Bank for International Settlements Innovation Hub at the Bank of England. And as has been stated, I am the first Black female senior advisor at the Bank of England so far. I started my career in the petroleum industry in Texas and Louisiana as an oil and gas analyst with Conoco, now ConocoPhillips, which required me to complete an offshore training program, living and commuting to offshore rigs in the Gulf of Mexico. I was one of the first women and women of color to accept the role and successfully complete it before being assigned to positions in offices in Louisiana. I then changed careers after the US oil and gas market downturn in the mid 80s and started over again in the reinsurance industry, specializing in catastrophic liability, providing risk transfer to major global organizations, including pharmaceuticals, integrated oil companies, banks, transportation, and other industry sectors. My career spanned various global organizations in the US and Bermuda. I ultimately accepted a senior role with AIG in London in 2002, ultimately rising to Senior Vice President of Star Excess International, an AIG subsidiary, overseeing a $100 million global portfolio requiring travel around the world. Subsequently, I was asked to join the Corporation of Lloyd of London as Deputy Head of Syndicate Underwriting Performance by the famous Rolf Toller, who was the first ever franchise performance directorate of Lloyd's. In the role, I was directly responsible for the profitability of syndicates representing 14 billion pounds in written premium of the 25 billion pound market, and I was a member of the panel that approved the total syndicate business plans for the entire market. The varied experiences, transferable skills, credibility, industry expertise are what ultimately positioned me for the current role that I have. I believe that my diversity of experiences and is definitely a positive in my day-to-day interactions with senior leadership and staff. Throughout my long career, I have the following 4 peers that have been key. Number 1, confidence. I have not chosen to focus on the fact that I have been the only one. I have actually used it to my advantage to dispel perceptions of tokenism. 2, risk taking. I started my career in petroleum and then started in reinsuring petroleum companies. Now I advise the Bank of England's Prudential Regulation Authority. The diverse career path has been both rewarding and challenging, but I've been willing to take roles that I knew would stretch me intellectually. Don't be afraid of the stretch. Relationships. Many people use the term networking, but to me that sounds clinical. I can honestly say that all of my jobs since university have come about through someone passing my name on for opportunities that were not on my radar. Be your best and honest self with everyone in your network, and they will think of you when opportunities arise. And the 4th is resilience. As you can imagine, over the last 4 decades, I've had ups and downs personally and professionally. However, I've come to understand that it was important to reach out and not be too proud to ask for help, advice, or guidance. The professional relationships I cultivated over the years have been of value during these times. I do believe that my life pillars of confidence, risk taking, networking, and resilience have been the threads that have allowed me to focus and not waste energy on negative comments, situations, or colleagues. I have focused on the lessons learned and used those to inform my next role or opportunity. I grew up with parents that were both successful in their professional careers as a business owner and educator. They demonstrated and expected me to achieve as they had, regardless of my gender, race, or Southern U.S. roots. They taught me to be proud of my heritage and be an ambassador to my race and other ambassador to my race for others. My late mother was also a great influence, attaining a Master's of Science and postgraduate degrees from New York University in the early 60s. My grandmother was also well educated and accomplished. They both gave me role models as women of color and encouraged me to do the same for those coming behind me. I have occupied many spaces where I was the only and the first, but I have taken and continue to use those opportunities to speak up and have my voice heard, dispelling stereotypes and negative views. As the late Shirley Chisholm, who was the first African American and woman to run for US president for a major party in 1972, famously stated, "If they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair." It is often said that you've got to see it to be it in discussions of DE&I. I do agree. However, I also think that someone has to be the first. So why not you? That can be applying for a new role, taking on more responsibility, or volunteering. This is what I encourage colleagues that I mentor to consider. You never know who you might influence. A personal example is a few years ago, I spoke at a conference for female university students. And after the talk, I had conversations with several of the young ladies in attendance. Earlier this year, one of the young ladies that I had discussed working at the BOE stopped me in the hallway to say that she had joined the bank after graduation due to my conversation with her at the conference. Amazing, but shows how representation can influence and impact others that look like you. In conclusion, throughout my career, I have not let gender or race define me. I have embraced my diversity as a positive. I believe that as individuals, we all are diverse and bring different talents, skills, and experiences to the workplace. The challenges we now face, such as climate change, technology, generational differences, as well as social expectations, mean that we need collective voices to create better outcomes now more than ever. I'd like to acknowledge and thank Mohini Gurung for her contribution in reviewing this speech. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed. It's a fascinating career path, as you say, going from the oil business through to insurance, through to advice and mentoring. And really good to hear that that's a path which you can, and your pillars on which you build the peers on which you built this. But I guess the question comes up as, is financial services neutral to these issues of diversity, equality, and inclusion, or is it good? Is it bad? And I just ask you to reflect on whether businesses should be leading society, or does business simply follow where society is taking a lead?
Right. Well, for the first question, is financial services good, bad, and different to DE&I? My opinion is like, any other sector. The financial services sector is has some firms that are leading on diversity and others that are laggards. As a general comment, I do believe that the industry is on par with others. The expectations of shareholders, employees, regulators, and the general public, as well as attracting talent, are key drivers that move firms, I believe, to address the DE&I topic. I don't know that business is actually leading society in this area. Perhaps it may be society leading business, because certainly the court of public opinion plays a role in how firms react, retreat, pivot, and sometimes sometimes rightly so. And others firms feel compelled to do due to reputational and market share impacts on their businesses. So I think that there are many drivers. I think that organizations in financial services sector, as I said, run the gamut. But I do think that the court of public opinion does play a pivotal role in that. Yeah.
It's very interesting that Tom Peters, who wrote In Search of Excellence back in the day, is now advocating for all-woman leadership in companies. He just says women make better leaders. It's the end. The data's in. Give up. And we're not quite in that position. But do you think, of following up on this question, that businesses that pay attention to diversity and are looking for diversity in their workforce, are they better run businesses, do you think?
Well, I think it's been a lot written about the different styles of women versus men. And I do think it comes down to you can have a boardroom, or senior leadership that are all women, but there again, topic perhaps of groupthink could come up. Just because you've changed over from all men to women, and I think that's why the term, I know it's perhaps overused or used a lot, diversity of thought, cognitive diversity, diversity of experiences, if you will, are what I believe lead firms to make better choices and better decisions. And I do agree that there should be more women, in senior leaderships, and there are obviously firms that are doing much better than others in that. But I still believe that there should be diversity in all areas, with skill sets. Yes. Mhm.
I'm going to skip over the next question because I'm still hoping Afua will be able to join us, and I know she had
Right.
a particular view on the next one. But if we move on to the question of recognition awards,
Right.
there are various award schemes out there for both women in business, of ethnic diversity in business. Do they help, and what's their impact, do you think?
Well, I think that definitely, recognizing different individuals, their achievements, their awards, their accomplishments is certainly positive. It's a good thing. It's a good thing to, um, if you will, give people visibility that perhaps may not have gotten it otherwise. However, the concern is that it's not just about, oh, someone has gotten an award and we've recognized them, hey, that's great. It really sometimes can lead people to not really appreciate the complexity of actually the whole concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion in in its forms. So I do think that it's appropriate for people to get awards and be recognized. That is wonderful, but we should not forget that it's a complicated discussion, and just because people in your organization have gotten awards doesn't give you a go card, pass card.
Yes, I don't know what the equivalent is for greenwashing in this area, but I suspect there are firms who they've got all
Exactly.
the policies written down and they've got recognised around the policies, but the reality may be not quite there yet.
Exactly.
Um, and I guess one of the questions that's really on our mind at the moment is the whole question of AI and what difference it's going to make to the working world in particular. But there is a diversity aspect to sort of technology in all its forms, and just wonder whether you had any thoughts about the impact of AI on diversity, and what are the issues that we're facing around new technology development?
Well, simplistically, I think that if there is no diversity of thought, um, and experience when developing AI tools, whatever they may be, then you're going to more than likely have biases in the outputs. And, there could be unintended consequences, and that could adversely affect the whole DE&I space, right? Or what you're trying to accomplish. Certainly, there are positives with AI. No one denies that. But my concern is really around who is around the table that is determining why, what the usage of the particular tool is, and what are the outcomes. And if the outputs do not accurately reflect what your strategy is, what you're looking to accomplish, this is why you always have to have, what do you say, a person in the loop, right? A human in the loop. Um, but many people I find do fall into what is called the neutrality fallacy. Silicon Valley has this term, right? That meaning that any outputs from a computer are neutral. Um, that is a fallacy. There are trade-offs, and so who determines what is better? Who determines those trade-offs? And if you continue to have people that are of a certain demographic, certain age group, certain academic level, that can rationally think through a lot of these topics. sometimes there's a lot of groupthink there, and you can miss some of the some of the unintended consequences. I regularly attend the all-party parliamentary group on AI evidence meetings, and where the pros and cons of AI are discussed. Recently, there was a discussion on the new white paper that the government's come out with. Um, my my views on that. That's a great it's a great forum for people to come and give evidence in the various sectors and how it impacts their businesses and their business models, startups. However, there are very few people that are diverse or from underrepresented groups that give evidence, and so there again, there are discussions being had about AI technology, the benefits, but making sure that we are not leaving people behind, not leaving the underrepresented behind in how we move forward. Yeah.
Thanks. I'm going to move because it goes quite nicely, I think, to a question from the audience. Chidi Obara has asked questions about whether justice needs to play into this. He talks about JEDI, justice, equality, diversity, and inclusion, and whether you think that justice needs to count in this area, but also whether you can comment on any differences between the US and the UK in justice, equality, diversity, inclusion issues. You perhaps have some insight, at least, into what's happening across the pond.
Right. Well, I think, of course, in my opinion, these are my opinions, of course, justice plays into it. We want to have a fair and equal society. That is the goal, right? And I do think that very much so. I think that justice plays into it. What is right? Being fair to your population. Um, Speaking about the U.S. and the U.K., yes, very different cultures, very different backgrounds, and of course, in the U.S., we had a situation back from the civil rights movement on civil rights, right, and basically making sure that you're using the term underrepresented, women. People that were disabled, of course, people of color, were given equal opportunity in roles and sectors that they were previously not able to enter. And that pushed through a lot of progressiveness, if you will, with regards to getting more Black and brown people in, leadership roles. And I'm basically a legacy of that. My parents were both very active in the civil rights movement. When you come to this country, you know, there's a different take on that. People talk about positive discrimination, which was a term that was not familiar with until I came here. But I simply say that you need I put it this way, you need to get the invitation to the dance, right? Okay. You need to get there. And, so that you need to find ways that you bring people along and truly reach out to them and embrace their diversity. So I don't know if I really answered this question or not, but those are my views on it. Yeah. That's a complicated question to answer in what 2 or 3 minutes.
We'll have to have another session on that occasion. But he has put a note in saying thanks very much for your thoughtful and considered answer. So
Right.
he obviously feels that you've managed the question.
Thank you.
Graham Elliott has asked, do you ever feel that where you have developed ways of overcoming potential discrimination, are there other members of minorities who are observably less successful in doing so? And where do you think the difference lies?
Well, I mean, I can't speak for all folks that are in the underrepresented groups, but I think what it comes down to for me, probably the previous question answers some of that. I mean, I grew up in America. I'm American, and I grew up in a situation where I was I was told, look, you're black, you're a woman, you're going to be that all your life. You're well educated, get on with it. And so, that is the background that I came from. I did not come from a situation where I felt I was lesser than. So I've really just gotten on with it. I'm certainly not naive, and I'm certainly sure that people, as I said, had different perceptions and stereotypes of me, which is, why I put it in my brief presentation that I gave. But that was my background. That was my start in life, if you will. And I don't think I know is what has gotten me through a 40-year career, very diverse career. Now, some other people obviously might not necessarily have had that background, or maybe that guidance, that teacher, that person, that aunt, uncle, or whomever, that basically encouraged them and spoke to them or helped them along that way. So I think that it is different for each individual. And that is also why I think that it's so important for Afua, myself, tons of other people. That's actually why the power list is there and was established to highlight people, especially in this country, that were doing well and acting as role models. And one of the things too with the power list is that we have an obligation to mentor and to work with up and coming young professionals and university students in order to address some of the maybe the hesitancy or the lack of maybe having as much confidence as they should. So these are things that, and this is why, as we say, I truly believe that representation is important. Yes.
I was just thinking about mentoring as a kind of, you mentioned the aunts and uncles, the
Yes,
extended network, the teacher, someone to encourage you, and that's maybe where mentoring has a role
exactly.
in taking that
Well,
place.
mentoring, of course, but of course we know sponsorship, right? Someone that's in a senior position within organizations that sees a junior person and actually brings them along. It's a lot to be said about reverse mentoring also. Senior leadership looking to the younger generation or looking to people that are coming in from different experiences and actually understanding what some of their concerns are, what some of their anxieties are. And I believe that this understanding of experiences, no matter what race, ethnicity, gender you are, is what really, as I said, is needed in order to address the issues that we have facing us. Generationally, we have Gen Zers, and I think they're called Gen Alphas now, right? They will they will be coming into the workforce, and firms for sustainability even are going to need to be able to exist, to coexist in organizations. That is what I posit.
Super. And I guess one of the questions is within an organisation. I know you're at the Bank of England, not in such an executive role, maybe as Afro
Mhm.
is. But, what advice or tips would you give to some managers and leaders as to how you can support and recognise diverse talent?
I'm at the bank, and we have some very, very sort of high firewalls, and unfortunately, I've not been able to get into the webinar, so apologies for that. But I'm absolutely on the line on audio, and so so I would say that from an exec perspective, it's important that we have to recognise that everyone is talented in their own way, and we shouldn't try to sort of put a definition on what talent is. We need to realise that everyone is talented, and we shouldn't think that somebody who looks a certain way or sounds a certain way or has a particular experience or background or skill set knows the best. It's important that we engage with individuals and we build relationships so that we can understand what their unique strengths are. And we also know that people perform differently according to what their environment is. And so if we create a positive environment, there's a better chance that people will perform to their true potential. And so we need to avoid creating a negative environment where actually our talents and our abilities don't shine through, and people feel as though they're not, giving their best, and they're not motivated or inspired to give their best. And so, in practical terms, some of the things that we've looked at are, challenging how we're actually allocating opportunities. So we know that people are only as good as the opportunities that they're given, and so really challenging how we're allocating those opportunities, and trying to make sure that we give equal opportunities for staff to attend high-profile meetings, so that they're more visible and so that they're more tuned into the discussions and they have the context, and then to take it a step further to actually encourage some of the people who've been doing the work to actually present. So we have this author in the room policy at the bank, which means that if you've been working on a presentation, as the author, you should attend the meeting and you should present your own work. That way you get the recognition and you get the visibility. And as Tangy already mentioned, we encourage sponsorship, mentorship, and talent programs so that we're nurturing different types of talent. And then finally, what I'd say is that some of the most controversial sort of conversations happen when, as an exec, you discuss reward and promotions. And I think in those situations, it's really important to challenge whether certain groups are doing disproportionately well, or not doing well disproportionately, and to then question why that is. We can't just assume that a particular group is better or worse. We really need to challenge what's underneath that and get under the bonnet and just to think about what opportunities have particular individuals been given, what support have they had, what mentors have they had, and we need to try to level out the playing field so that diverse talent have the tools that they need to thrive, so that everybody can be successful.
Thank you, and welcome, Afua. It's good you were able to join us towards the end of the call, but it's really good to hear from you. I was just reflecting on a previous experience where we ran a kind of a talent and progression scheme, which was really powerful, because you're saying to people quite early in their career that the judgment of senior people is that you've got the ability to achieve senior level representation. But again, monitoring that system to make sure that we were really taking account of who was getting through that system was really important. We've got a question for Hugo Innes, which is probably again for you, Afua, just asking, how does the Bank of England work with helping to nudge other financial institutions? So either of you, I guess, but do you think there's a role there in the regulatory role or in just leadership role for the Bank of England shifting the dial for other financial institutions?
Yeah, so I mean, I can start, and then Tangy, you might have some specific thoughts on this as well. But we are conscious of the role that we have and the influence that we have, and therefore we do see it as important for us to engage with other financial institutions and to ensure that financial institutions, particularly the ones that we regulate, are conscious of the wider societal benefit. And actually, as part of the ESG agenda that most of the firms have, they'll be thinking about this anyway. But we absolutely consider this when we're regulating firms, and when we're when we are particularly working with boards on some of the senior appointments. That's something that we think about. But also, we consult, and so there's more that you'll be hearing from the PRA on that front later on in this year.
Tangy, anything to add?
Yes, there was, I'm sure, well, maybe some of the audience may know, there was a discussion paper between the FCA, the PRA, and the wider bank that was out. I want to say it was last year, and it was actually talking about diversity at board level, right? And addressing the groupthink. Cognitive diversity, which is really what you need around the board table. As I said, with ESG agendas, with geopolitics, with technology, all of these things that boards are now dealing with, and what I call a polycrisis. You really do need to have different people at the table. You can't just rely on one person coming in and giving a presentation, perhaps, once a quarter or whatever. You really need to stay on top of this. And, so diversity in the lens of cognitive diversity and really addressing potential groupthink and confirmation bias. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much. We're kind of out of time because, as we know, we started a little bit late. But Afua, I just wonder whether you just wanted to give sort of a brief overview of how you reached your position. I mean, sort of the background to your experience.
Sure. So, very quickly, I would say that I have a bit of a different background. So I read chemistry at university, at Oxford initially, and then at Princeton, and I specialized in organic chemistry. And then I decided that I wanted to move into financial services. So I became an auditor at Ernst & Young, auditing banking and capital markets clients. And then in 2007, it was the global financial crisis, and I moved into mergers and acquisitions at UBS, working in the group strategy team, so helping to advise the board in Zurich on acquisitions and disposals. And so if we think about the recent Credit Suisse acquisition, I would have been working on that deal back in those days had we done it. And so I did that for a few years, and then I had the opportunity to move into the investment bank as a financial institutions group investment banker, so helping to advise clients, mostly European banks, on the challenges that they were facing to help them shore up their capital, liquidity, and funding during the crisis. And then in 2012, I moved to Barclays as a finance director, and we did, a major cost transformation over a 3-year period. And so at that time, Bob Diamond was just leaving, and then Anthony Jenkins came in as the CEO. And we thought about the customer, and we thought about how to make the customer's experience as streamlined and as smooth and efficient as possible. And we therefore put the customer first, and then re-engineered many of our processes and used data and technology to support that, and took out a lot of cost. And I was very much involved in helping to design and plan that cost transformation program, and I worked across the chief operating officer, and then also in the investment bank, and then I became the CFO of mortgages, and then 4 years ago I was appointed as the CFO of the Bank of England.
So going from organic chemistry to finance is always a step, but I'm sure the analytical tools that you developed as a chemist will certainly have come in handy. We really are out of time, and it's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you, Afua, for joining despite the technical difficulties that we had. It's been a great conversation. And just to say that Chidi Otiobaho, who asked one of the questions, has said his takeaway is dive excellence, kind of a mixture of diversity and excellence, which we should always be paying attention to. So just to conclude, we've got more, again, sort of thanks to our sponsors. I mentioned them before, but they really are stalwarts in helping us cover the range of topics that we do. We have other events coming up, and in particular, keep an eye on an event tomorrow on transforming rather than optimizing, on a history-based theory of change power. Marisha's talking to us on Thursday about captive insurance companies. And then we have a session with Liechtenstein next week to hear what's going on in that financial centre. Normally on these occasions we'd open the floor for a round of applause. We can't do that today, but sincere thanks to you, Tangy, sincere thanks to you, Afua, for joining us today and giving us some insight into your thoughts on what is a topic which we should spend more time talking about, and we maybe will have you back for another session on another occasion. So many thanks indeed, many thanks to the audience, and we'll see you on future occasions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks very much.
Bye.